My name is Laura Winnie. I am the Humane Educator for DuPage County Animal Services, and tonight we're going to talk about helping homeless pets. So for tonight, probably lasts about an hour, and I will save some time for Q&A at the end. Right now, everybody is muted so that we don't have any audio interference, and your cameras are turned off so that we don't have any lag. Zoom doesn't really like it when we have a bunch of people's cameras on all at the same time. So please keep your video cameras off and yourselves muted. Throughout the entire time, we are recording this presentation to post to our YouTube page later. If you do have a question, though, feel free to throw it into our chat box. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and throw a link to our program survey in there now. And we really are always looking for feedback and information of what people are interested in. So if at any point you can just take a few minutes to fill out that survey, I really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll remember at the end to remind you. Okay, so Zoom housekeeping out of the way, what are we going to talk about tonight? We are going to go over, first and foremost, what do you do if you find a stray animal? Then we're going to talk about community cats. Next, we'll go into benefits of fostering. And last but not least, we'll talk about how to prevent lost pets and homeless pets from happening in the first place. There's nothing like a good prevention to cure what ails us. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, at any point, go ahead, throw a question into the chat box. I won't check it until the very end of the presentation, though, just so you know. So what do you do if you find a stray? There are so many questions that people have, and it's a big thing when they call the shelter, when they call us at DuPage County Animal Services. Oh my gosh, I found this dog. What do I do with it? Or, they'll comment on our stray posts. Oh my gosh, how could anybody abandon this animal? That's so sad. Well, before we even get started into what to do, I want to caution you not to pass judgment on lost pets because they can get loose for so many reasons. They could have escaped their owners, just an accident. Somebody opened the door and they hopped out and, okay, that happened. Or somebody thought, oh, I'll just let them out to piddle in the front yard. They'll come back, right? And then they don't. So, and there are people out there who do steal pets. That is a thing that happens. And then maybe they have second thoughts or they get overwhelmed. And so then they don't know what to do with the pet that they have. Why I am such a big advocate for not passing judgment. So when you see animals posted to Facebook, or if you find a stray animal, even if it's in rough shape, understand that one, it doesn't take very long for an animal outside of a home to get into rough shape, especially some of our longer haired animals that are used to that daily grooming. A couple of days after that, and it can get pretty rough looking. They can look neglected, abused, but that is not always the case. And there might be a family out there desperately looking for this pet. So it's very important that we do not judge harshly with these folks who have lost a family member. And one of the reasons that I feel very strongly about this is because it happened to me. It happened to my family when I was young. I was, I think, 11 or 12. We went on vacation. We left our dogs with a family friend. And Elliot, here in the picture, got out. And he is a beagle mix, as you can see. If you've been to my webinars before, you know how insane I am about beagles. Elliot is where it started from a very young age. And he did what beagles do. He ran. He followed his nose. Our family friend didn't tell us that he got out. We didn't find out that he was gone until we got home from vacation 2 weeks later to pick up. When we came and picked up our other dog, they're like, oh, by the way, Elliot got out. It's been a couple weeks. Sorry. So he was missing for a very long time. And it's just by happenstance that we got him back. The finders, so where I grew up, Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, if you're familiar with it, is very high second home ownership. And the people who found Elliot, his tag had fallen off. He still had his collar. They knocked around the doors on the neighborhood and they called one of the 2 veterinarians in the local town. So they did put some effort into it, but unfortunately they didn't call our veterinarian, and we didn't live in that area. And, you know, beagles can get pretty far. So he was actually several miles away from where he started and still several miles away from home. And when we got back, we talked to everybody we could, and my dad went to the local sheriff's office to say, hey, has anybody reported finding a dog? And it was just by chance that one of the city aldermen happened to be there, and he happened to be a neighbor of these people who had found him. Now, by the time we found this out, they had gone back home. So their home at Lake of the Ozarks was a vacation home. They had gone back home to Kansas, and we tracked down their phone number. We called them and we said, hey, you have our dog. Can we please have it back? And they said, no, you obviously don't care enough about it. It's been 3 weeks. Also, we took him to the vet, so you owe us $200. I guess then we'll give you your dog back. So in family lore, we say that our dog Elliot was kidnapped and held for ransom across state lines. So please, please do not judge people. Do not judge or talk harshly on social media when you see that an animal is missing, because it can happen to very responsible people. And it does not mean that they do not love that animal. It just means that something happened, right? Stuff happens, okay? Now, that being said, if you do lose your pet, one of the things that my dad did was very good. He went to local law enforcement. So absolutely, that's great. Flyers, if you live in a neighborhood with a lot of residential people, putting up flyers. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. Most animals don't go super, super far. Now, this changes depending on your animal's age, energy levels, spay-neuter status, but for the most part, they tend to be close to home. So putting up flyers and getting people's eyes on your animal is going to be very, very helpful, okay? And nowadays, social media is the big thing. We're going to go over this in depth a little bit later on about where you can post for when you have lost your pet. And you can always go to our website. I have a detailed video that I put out earlier this week on the steps to take if you lose your animal, and it's right there next to our report a lost animal on our website. Because at DuPage County Animal Services, we always check that database against any animal that comes in addition to people who have called and other agencies that have given us notice. Okay, so that's something important to know. All right. So we've talked about not judging people. We've talked about what to do if you lose your pet. Let's go right into what to do if you find a stray animal. And I want to caution you, because animals that are scared, that are out of their comfort zone, can cause injury just trying to defend themselves, right? I mean, we are complete strangers. They don't know our intentions. They don't know what's going on. So it's important to understand that you need to pay attention to their body language. So right here, we have a very fearful dog cowering in the corner, and just reaching out and grabbing this dog could cause it to defend itself and possibly bite, scratch, lunge, bruise, all sorts of things. It's amazing how strong animals can be when they're really, really scared. It's that adrenaline kicking in. Because the last thing we want is for a finder to get injured, because that just adds to the problem. So, you know, paying attention to the whole body, all right? One of the things we hear sometimes during a biting incident is, well, it was wagging its tail. I thought that meant it was fine. I thought it meant it was friendly. Sometimes dogs will wag their tail as a show of arousal, that they are upset about something. So it's more important to look at the whole body. So if their body posture is very, very tense and they're wagging that tail, but it's like very stiffly, like back and forth, that's a sign, hey, don't mess with me. Okay, that's not a woohoo, friendly, come play, wagging tail. That's a nope, not having it. Back off. All right. If the animal is sick or injured, this is also a potential for the animal to lash out. So approaching an animal can create an animal that's sick or injured can create a dangerous situation for you. So from a safe distance, we want you to look for, is the animal moving? Okay, is it conscious? Do you see blood or other obvious signs of injury? Is it moving around, but it looks awkward? Is it limping? Is it holding itself awkwardly? Is it behaving strangely? Okay, is it turning in circles? Is it cowering? What is it doing? Paying attention to those body language cues can often tell you signs that it isn't feeling well. Is it kind of moving drunkenly? Okay, that can be a sign of distemper, which is a very, very harsh virus. And we want to make sure that it doesn't get worse, okay, by us rushing in and putting it in a situation where it feels like it has to defend itself. So let's say you find an animal and it is sick, it is injured, you can tell. Maybe it got hit by a car, okay? One of the main things we're going to tell you is that any animal care professional would tell you is you need to pay attention to where the head is at all time, okay? You need to control the muzzle because you can make a wrong move and cause that animal pain, and an animal that has been perfectly fine in the previous few minutes is all of a sudden going to have that jolt of pain. It's going to go straight to their head, and they might bite. They might lash out in defense. So making sure that we control that muzzle will help ensure that you can then get the animal to safety and get that animal to medical care. So I've got a little video here, how to make an emergency muzzle with just a regular leash. Okay, so let's take a look.
Okay, Finn and I are going to demonstrate how to do an emergency muzzle with a leash. So the first thing you do is tie a square knot like that and leave a great big loop. Secondly, you'll put the loop under the dog's chin, pull it tight, and then you'll tie in a bow around the back of it. It's got to go under the ears. Tie it in a bow. And you have an emergency muzzle.
Okay, pretty simple, right? Now, I will point out one of the reasons that she says to tie it in a bow and not just knot it in the back is because you want to be able to release it quickly. If the dog vomits and starts to choke, or it's having problems breathing and you are trained to give rescue breaths to a dog, you want to be able to release that muzzle very quickly and not have to worry about knots and things like that. Now, obviously, this is her dog, very calm, very comfortable with her. If the animal is showing any warning signs, growling, showing teeth, anything like that, do not attempt to put on a muzzle. That's when you need to call in for professional help right away. So animal control, law enforcement, emergency vets, that kind of thing. All right. This is more for an animal that is showing you good body language, but you want to see how badly injured it is before you attempt to do anything. And again, while you're doing the muzzle, pay attention to that body language because it can change, and we want to make sure that everybody stays safe. All right, so you have found an animal. Now we need to check it for ID. So you've got it, and we're trying to figure out, okay, is this a stray pet? What's going on here? So obvious things, collar, ID tags, also rabies tags. So in DuPage County, you would call us, Animal Services, and we would be able to either look up the tag ID number in our database, or if it's a more recent number, we can see who sold that tag, if it came from us directly, if it came from a veterinarian, and then they would have it in their computer system right away, who links it. Because there is a bit of lag time between when vets give the vaccination and when we get the records and combine the information in our system. So sometimes we need to go directly to the source of the vaccination, to the veterinarians. Now, collars, ID tags, rabies tags, those are all great. But like in the case of my dog, they can go missing. So what we highly recommend is a microchip, because that is something that goes underneath the skin and stays there. It doesn't come out. And as long as the owners keep that information up to date, then we're good to go. A lot of times we'll run into trouble where, you know, they registered it when they first got the animal, but then they moved and they never updated that information, or they changed their phone number, or they changed their email address. So the information in there is old, and then we have to play detective to figure it out. There is some misconception about a microchip. It is not like a geo tracker. It's not something you pull up on your phone and it, you know, Google Maps and figure out where your animal is. No, it simply has a barcode that can be scanned, and it has a unique number, and that unique number is tied to the owner's registration information. But there's a lot of information that comes in there. We typically have the pet's name, what kind they are, who the owner is, who implanted the microchip, which is very important, because if people forget to register, a lot of times we can go back and find out from the implant facility, especially if it's a veterinarian's or a shelter or rescue, who then took the dog from there. Microchip scanners can be found at veterinary clinics, police departments, animal shelters, animal rescues. So you can just give us a call, give anybody a call and say, hey, I found a stray animal. Can I come in and scan it for a chip? Perfect. Now, cats have a unique identifier. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's talk about tattoos. So tattoos used to be an older way of doing the microchip. That was normally tattooed on the inside of the ear flap. That has kind of gone away. Some old school veterinarians will still do it. Or if an animal was rescued from a lab or a government facility, then they might have done the tattoo route instead of the microchip route. So it's a good idea to check the inside of the ears. But if you're having a veterinary, police department, animal shelter, animal rescue looking for the microchip, then you can get some additional help looking for a tattoo as well. Okay, now cats have a unique identifier that you can be on the lookout for, and that's called tipped ears. And we have a picture of it here. And what this means is if you see a cat that just has the top of one ear, typically the left ear, just shortened a little bit, that was done during a trap neuter release program. And that means that that cat is a community cat. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, this has happened where we have been brought what the person thought was a pet rabbit, and it wasn't. It was a wild rabbit. So understanding when you're looking, how do we know, right? How do we know that it's a pet? How do we know that it's wild? Typically, wild animals are going to be that tawny brown color, okay? Whereas domestic ones are going to have a much wider variety in coloration. So that's where you get your whites, your blacks, your mixes, your long-haired. They're also typically going to be a little bit on the bigger side because they've had steadier access to food. They don't necessarily have to go and search for it every single time. So something to keep in mind as well. It is possible for those animals, even when they're wild, to lose their fear of humans, especially if someone in the neighborhood has been feeding them. That doesn't mean they're a pet, though, okay? They're still a wild animal. They still belong in nature. Now, once you've figured out, okay, there's no identifying collar, there's nothing, understanding what do we look for. So to the best of your ability, noting down the breed, the age, the sex, and the size. So, if it's a small dog, be like, oh yeah, it's about a foot tall. If it's Great Dane size, yeah, it's basically a small pony. For cats, looking at their coats is one way that we determine. So looking at their coat length. So if it's short hair, that's your basic tabby cat, like what we see in the picture, medium hair, and then long hair. So long hair is like some of the Siameses and stuff like that. Are there any distinctive coats, coloring, you know, like, oh yeah, it has a black spot on its forehead? Okay. Because when you call into an agency, just telling us, I found a cat, is not going to help us search our database any faster. But I found a male cat, short-haired, orange tabby coloring, like what you see in the picture, yellow eyes, was found at this intersection, and it has one white foot. Perfect. Okay, great. Because then we can start to look into the information that we have to see if there are any matches. And location found closest intersection is perfectly fine. You don't have to put your address out on every single thing. Closest intersection is great. Now, what we tell people is, if at all possible, if you can hold on to the animal for a little bit, because like I said, a lot of animals are found very close to their home, less than a mile from their home. So going around and, you know, knocking on doors, figuring out, okay, is anybody out looking for an animal? You know, is anybody checking under bushes? Is anybody walking around with an empty leash? Look for flyers that match as well. Just take a quick little jaunt around the neighborhood if you can. And then if you are going to hold on to the animal for a little bit, if you are comfortable and able to do so, post your own flyer right on your mailbox around the neighborhood. Found animal. Knock on door. Knock on my door. Because what we hate is when an animal is brought into the shelter and 10 minutes later, we get a call. Oh my gosh, where's my animal? Because there are fees associated with reclaiming a lost animal. It's the rules, and we always feel really bad about it, because if the finder had been able to hold out for just a little bit longer, we would have been able to reconnect them outside of the shelter. The animal never would have had to come into our, frankly, very stressful building, and then the owner wouldn't have had to pay those reclaim fees. So if possible, give it a little bit, okay? See what you can do. And as far as social media goes and who to contact, Nextdoor is a fabulous way to connect with people in your neighborhood. Nextdoor even has a pet directory for your neighborhood. So you can go and look at the pets that live in your neighborhood and see if one of them is a match, and then try to reach out, okay? Local Facebook groups. So for example, what's happening in Villa Park? You know, you can always reach out that way. There are many, many lost pet options for Facebook. So there's Lost Pets of DuPage County, Lost Pets of Illinois. Then there are some that are specific for cats, dogs, and whatever. And then you definitely want to reach out to DCAS and local law enforcement, because it is possible that someone has called us or filed a lost report and are currently out driving around looking for their animal. So definitely give us a call so that, one, we can check to see if we've had any reports of the lost pet, and two, so that we can advise you on next steps. So before you can bring the animal inside or bring it anywhere, we do want to talk about containment, because calling in your local law enforcement for a stray animal that you saw running down the street, there's not a whole lot that the police officers or the animal control officers are going to be able to do for that. We don't have any magical abilities. Trust me, I wish we did. That would make our lives a whole lot easier. So you can start that process if you feel comfortable with it, trying to get the animal contained so that I can get somewhere to safety. You know, you might need to work on it a little bit, might need to take some patience, and you need to build some trust. But first and foremost is you want to make sure that you keep yourself safe, okay? If you see a dog running down the street, do not run after it in the middle of the street with oncoming traffic, okay? It's not going to help anybody for you to get injured by a car. So not only don't run into the street in the middle of traffic, but also try not to chase the animal, because that can be very, very scary. Or if it's a playful animal, they might think it's a brand new game you started, okay? So, you know, use slow and steady movement, even just remaining exactly where you are, maybe tossing some treats, you know, nearby you to show like, hey, I'm fine, I'm fine. Some animals may be too stressed to respond to those treats. So just trying to be a calming presence may be enough to get them to come over to you. Now, contain doesn't just mean on a leash. I don't mean that you have to, like, you know, be right up in that animal's business and, you know, clip them with something. It could be a backyard, could be your garage, okay? If you can corral them into an area where they can't get out, then, you know, law enforcement can take it from there. Or you've at least gotten them out of the weather to help them out. So if you are interested in being prepared for this eventuality, this happened to me a couple weeks ago, actually. I was driving home and I saw a dog take off down the street. And then 2 seconds later, I saw a bunch of people chasing it. And so I stopped. I had some stuff in my car, so I grabbed it. And, you know, it's good to have wet food, something really, really smelly that's going to appeal to them, especially if they've been hungry. That's going to be great. Water. When you're giving out water to a stray animal, you always want to do just a little itty bitty bit at first, okay? You don't want to just plunk a whole bowl full of water in front of them. Treats are great, especially ones that you can toss. Slip leads, a towel or a blanket. So if you do get them into a corner, especially like I'm thinking a cat, then you can protect yourself and make it less scary for the animal by putting that towel or blanket over them so that they can't see what's going on. That actually helps calm them down. Again, it's all about your own comfort and safety levels, okay? Collapsible bowls are great so that if you need to provide aid once they're contained or need to provide something for them once they're contained, that's awesome. And keep the phone numbers of local rescues, local PD, and us right with you, okay? So this is your stray animal supply kit. And I will say that in that instance, where I was working with the person, it turns out that the dog had just slipped off his leash while out walking with the owner. So the people were chasing it and they happened to chase it right back to where the owner was. And the owner just was like, come on, dude, like, what are you doing? And dog came right up to it, okay? But the important thing is that it was luck that they happened to chase him right back to his owner, because again, that's kind of that game thing where he just thought he was having a great old time. Woohoo, running away from these people. One of the things that you can try is running in the opposite direction and seeing if they'll chase you. So that is a technique that I have seen work. Again, it's all about your comfort level and it's all about paying attention to the animal's body language. All right. You only want to do that with an animal that has nice, loose, wiggly body language and is out having a grand old time. You do not want to do that with an animal that is showing signs of fear and aggression, because that running, chasing instinct can lead to, you know, prey predator instinct as well. And nobody wants to get a bite in the booty. It's just not a good way to start and finish a day. So keep that in mind. It is a technique that can be used, but really only if you know the dog or if you can see that they have very positive body language, that's going to be effective. Now, temporarily housing stray animals is perfectly acceptable, but make sure that you contact the proper authorities, okay? The last thing you want is for you to be doing a good deed, right? You took this animal in off the streets and then the owner accuses you of trying to steal their animal. Nobody wants that, right? So make sure that you contact the proper authorities. And if you are willing to hold on to the animal while looking for the owner, that's fine. We do recommend quarantining them from children and other animals in the home, because you don't know that animal's story. You don't know if they're afraid of kids. You don't know if they're afraid of other dogs. You don't know if they have a disease or something, parasites, something going on that could affect the rest of your home. So containing them to an area where it's nice and safe and quiet, where they can decompress, and where they're not going to be a danger or a hazard to any of the other animals or the kids in your home. Now, you provide small amounts of food and water at first, because if the animal has been out and about for a long time, you don't want them to woof everything up, because it's very possible that it'll all just come right back out. Okay, so small amounts of food, small amounts of water at first. And if they're giving you okay body language, you can examine them to see, do they have any parasites that could infect your home? Maybe they need a little bit of flea treatment or something like that. Are there any huge medical issues that you can see that are going to threaten this animal's quality of life? Okay. So if you want to keep the animal, which does happen, it happened to me. The animal's been in your home, you haven't heard anything from the owners, you don't know why, but dog's getting along great, cat's getting along great in your home, you're falling in love, and you want to make it your family member. Best practice is to work with an agency that can do a legal stray hold. So, for example, DuPage County Animal Services. We are perfectly fine with working with finders to house animals during the stray hold, but we need to go through the proper channels. One, we need to make sure that all efforts have been made to find the owner. Because like I said, you don't know what happened and why this animal is out. And we do not want to pass harsh judgment on the fact that this animal is out, because it's possible that it was a mistake and there is a family out looking for them. We had a stray come into the shelter in 2020, late 2020. She actually made national news. Her name was Lola. She had been out on the streets in DuPage County for 3 years. Her family was here visiting. She got out. They had to go back home, out of state. And she was a pretty shy dog, so it took a long time for the finder to work with the dog to get it to the point where they could scan for the microchip and contact the family. And that family was absolutely thrilled to get their dog back. They were in tears when DCAS called them. So again, it happens, and we want to make sure that we are doing whatever we can to get these animals back to their homes, because animals are considered property under the law. Most of us consider them family members, but legally they are considered property. So if you are found not to have done everything that you were supposed to, which basically means contacting a law enforcement agency that can help you with this, it can open you up to civil liabilities and issues, okay? And nobody wants that. So it's perfectly fine to talk to the agency like, hey, I found this dog. I held on to it for a couple days, trying to see if I could find the owner. Nobody's shown up, but I am interested in adopting the animal if it's determined that it's homeless, that it doesn't have a place to go back to. Can I foster it while you guys do the stray hold? For DCAS, absolutely. We will, unless there is a reason not to, we will be very excited to talk about that, because the best place for an animal is in a home. Best place for a pet is in a home, and we know that. Our shelter can be very stressful for some animals, and we want them to be in a loving environment as soon as possible. So for stray holds, legally, it's 7 business days. And we've made our best faith efforts to reach out to the microchip companies, vet records, anything we can possibly do to try to track down this owner. And going from there and giving them ample time to come forward. So absolutely, it is possible, but we want people to understand that it's not okay to just pick up an animal off the street, assume it was abandoned, and take it from there, okay? Because that just leads to a lot of heartbreak all the way around. Now, community cats can get a little bit interesting. So these are on the other side of the spectrum, technically homeless, as in they do not live in a home, but they are not strays. They are not lost pets. Instead, a community cat is another word for an outdoor cat, a stray cat, sorry, not a stray cat, an alley cat, a feral cat, a street cat, a barn cat, a tomcat. So sorry, I shouldn't have stray in there. That is misleading because stray means that it's lost. So what we're talking about here is these are the exact same species of cats as pet cats, but they are considered unadoptable because they were never socialized with people. So there's kind of a Goldilocks zone with kittens to get them used to people. That's not something that just happens naturally with cats. It has to be purposeful. And when you have a cat that's never been around people during that Goldilocks zone when they're a kitten, then by the time they become an adult, they are very, very fearful. So when we talk about a feral cat, we're talking about their behavior and how they act around humans. And it doesn't imply anything about their health or, their breed necessarily. Now, typically it does tend to be more of that mixed breed as opposed to like the showcase cats. But one thing I found very interesting is that there was a study done that showed community cats, feral cats, can be as healthy as house cats. And it doesn't mean that their lifespan is going to be considerably shorter than a house cat, because cats are really good at fending for themselves. And that's just a fact. They are natural predators, very resourceful animals, and they can survive. I mean, that's why there are so many outdoor cats, even here in DuPage County, because they do well, they thrive. So when we're looking at community cats, one of the really big things is if they have a caregiver that's providing them food and shelter, then that person is looking out for their welfare, but that person isn't necessarily bringing them inside and cuddling them, okay? Now, that can happen where you have an outdoor cat, an indoor-outdoor cat, but an indoor-outdoor cat isn't necessarily a feral cat. An indoor-outdoor cat typically has been socialized around humans, but likes to go outside sometimes. So that's more of your stray pet area versus feral cats, community cats. They live all the time outside. So it's a distinction that can get kind of confusing. And they do tend to live in colonies or family groups. So where you see one community cat, typically there's like 3 or 4 more hiding in the bushes somewhere, okay? They become bonded not just to their colonies and their families, but also to their environment. So removing them doesn't really work because cats are really good at finding their way back home. There's a song about it, The Cat Came Back, and that's because they like where they live and they get used to it, and that's their territory. Possibly they have done their due diligence and there are no other competing colonies in the area for resources. So they are bonded to that specific area. If you have a neighborhood cat that you're concerned about, definitely talk to your neighbors first before taking action, because again, it might fall into that, oh yeah, it's Steve up the street, he lets his cat outside sometimes, talk to him about it, he's 90, what you gonna do, right? Because that happens, okay? The last thing we want to do is remove somebody's pet. Do we all wish that these cats didn't ever go outside where they were in danger? Yes, but it's not something that the police are going to do anything about, because it is still on the books. You know, free roaming cats is against a lot of ordinances around the county, but it's a big enough problem that the police have other things going on. So they're most of the time not going to do anything if you call it in, unless there's further reasons for concern, like neglect, abuse, a hoarding situation that's causing harm to human occupants, etc. So you definitely want to talk to your neighbors, one, to make sure it's not just an indoor-outdoor cat. Also to see, okay, is someone taking care of this? Is there a caregiver in the neighborhood that has the shelter, the food, water supply, and they know this cat? You know, these cats might have names from their caregivers. What can we do from there? So we do want to make sure that if we have caregivers, or if we are caring for these animals, that we are paying attention to their needs. So one of the biggest things that you can see is some of these cat colonies get, I don't have a better term for it, a little wonky, and that's because of poor food. The poor quality in food, the nutritional values are really, really low, and it can cause health problems over time. So they might have joint issues or other conditions just because of the low quality of the nutrition. I mean, you know, we saw Super Size Me, right? If you eat McDonald's every single day, you're probably not going to be in the healthiest of shapes. Same thing with meal mix and the lowest quality of the dry foods. So looking at a higher quality dry food to provide for their nutritional needs. We want to avoid any dairy products. I know that's a thing that Hollywood likes to show, but it can cause significant issues with their digestive systems. And chances are, if you're providing cow's milk for your cats out in the yard, they're not having the explosive diarrhea in your yard. They're going to a neighbor's yard to do that. So you're really not making friends, and you're not being environmentally friendly either. So even though you may not see any complications from giving dairy, we definitely want to avoid that with our cats. Also avoiding weed killers and fertilizers in your yard so that they don't build up in the fatty cells of the cats and cause problems, okay? We are going to talk more about feral fixers. They are the service here in DuPage County. They will give advice on dietary supplements and on medications that you can put on food, or if you see any problems, or what to look out for. For example, worms can be a very, very big problem. So if you see a cat that is super skinny where it normally wasn't, or a cat that was super fat that normally wasn't, worms might be the cause of that. And there are some dewormers that you can just buy over the counter and sprinkle on food on a regular basis to make sure that you're keeping their guts nice and happy and healthy. Do not let feral cats into your home. Don't let Aunt Harriet let feral cats into your home. They will try to seek nice, warm places for giving birth. And then it can be really, really hard to get those cats out. And it can create a snowball effect leading into a hoarding situation, which can greatly be greatly detrimental to the health, not only to the people, but also to the animals themselves, okay? So instead, what we want to do is trap, neuter, and return. So TNR. This is really our only humane option for helping community cats, okay? Basically, we are trying to prevent more community cats by making sure that they can't have babies and babies and babies. It is the most effective way to control populations. As I mentioned, trapping and taking them somewhere else isn't going to do much because they can go miles and miles and miles to get back to their home bases. So when a service comes to do a TNR, the animals are vaccinated. They are ear tipped so that we know from a distance, okay, these animals are good to go. And they are fixed. So they are spayed for females or neutered for males, and then returned back to their outdoor homes. So having a TNR service does not mean that they're going to come in and take all your cats away and, give you fines and give you tickets. Okay. That's not what Feral Fixers does. Feral Fixers is a volunteer organization that is interested in controlling the population of community cats. So if you have a neighbor who has community cats and you're concerned about this, oftentimes instead of going to law enforcement, you can go to Feral Fixers, because it's easier to talk to somebody that's not wearing a uniform and understanding what's going on. So the same information coming from a police officer, coming from a volunteer, is going to be a lot easier to swallow and maybe more effective. So if you are concerned about the quality of life for some cats in your neighborhood, if they are community cats, if they are outdoor cats, talk to Feral Fixers first to see what options they recommend before escalating it all the way up to law enforcement, because it might not necessarily mean that there's something criminal going on. It just might mean that, oh, okay, well, I started feeding a cat and then 2 more cats showed up and now I have 5 cats and just got a little overwhelming. Okay, so what can you do about that? Now, this happens a lot, especially in the spring, summer. Someone calls us up, hey, I found a kitten, it's orphaned. What do I do? Okay, well, first and foremost, let's make sure it's actually orphaned, because mom will often leave little baby kittens on their own while she go gets food or just goes and does her cat thing. And she can be away for a really long time, it seems like to us, and the kittens will still be fine. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring the kitten. So if it's safe where it is, leave it, okay? Like if it's in your backyard or something, you can put up some barriers to prevent your kids or your pets or your neighbors or whoever looky-loos to get there. And just try to see, does mom come back? Give it a day. As long as the kitten isn't constantly crying, is not injured, and is not cold to the touch. Okay, now we don't want to handle the baby with our bare hands too much, because rubbing our scent all over the baby is going to be very disconcerting for mom. So we want to also offer different shelter options to moms. So moms who have had a couple of litters have typically figured it out and will pick good places for, having their kids. First time moms might just panic and be caught unawares, and then all of a sudden they're having babies in your backyard. Okay, it happens. All right. So you can provide them some options, boxes lined with hay. You can even stack hay bales up against the foundation of your house. Foundations lose a lot of heat, so underneath a deck with a bunch of hay bales can be like 50 degrees, even during the coldest months. So that's really nice. We want to make sure that we are not bringing in a nursing kitten, because they require a ton of work. Bottle babies like this one that we see here is going to require feeding around the clock, and nobody can provide it as good a care as its mom can. So we're trying to wait until it's around 5 weeks old. That's when it can be separated from mom and socialize with humans, so it can become an adoptable pet. And if you do see mom, provide extra food than you normally would if you are a caregiver, because nursing burns calories, right? That happens for all animals. So I want to make sure that she has a good supply of food. Now, if you're going to intervene, it's important to have a plan. So if that mom hasn't been seen in a couple of days, or you've been monitoring the cat and there's been no movement, if you have any of those motion detection cameras, like wireless cameras, those are really good to put on. If the kitten is old enough to socialize, okay, but don't just swoop up the kitten and then try to come up with a plan. Same with an adult cat. Don't just go and swoop up the cat and then try to figure out what to do next. Have a plan in place before you do it. So contact Feral Fixers for their care resources. Now, I'm talking about all these different ages, newborns, 5 weeks old, whatnot. So let's take a look at some of these. Newborn kittens are pretty fragile and useless. They can't see anything. Their eyes are still closed, and they really can't hear anything either because their ear flaps are down. And they're tiny. They're real tiny. Okay. what you're looking for around that 5-week mark is the ears are fully erect, eyes are fully open, and they are steady on their feet and actively playing. So this is the point, that 4, 5, 6, 7-week mark, where we can socialize them with humans so that they can become indoor house cats. If we get to them later than 10 weeks, even later than 9 weeks, it's going to be a lot harder for those kittens to socialize. And at that point, their options are pretty limited. It's going to be colony cat, spay neutered, put back out into the colonies, or humane euthanasia because there's no place for that cat to go. Okay, so trying to pay attention to the age of the kitten, coming up with a plan, talking to feral fixers. So Feral Fixers is the community resource in DuPage County. They do education, training, and they do provide resources. So they have traps. They can transport cats to and from spay-neuter clinics like DuPage County Animal Services. And depending on their funding, they can also help cover necessary fees for medical purposes and things like that. So they are a wonderful, wonderful resource in our area. And we credit them with the decline in cat population over the years at the shelter, and the decline in the euthanasia numbers for cats at the shelter because of their work controlling the population of community cats in the area. Now, if you live outside DuPage County, there are several options as well. Cook County, Triple R Pets, Cat Vando, Feral Feline Project, and Kane County is Cinderella's Hope Cat Rescue and Animal Services Assistant Program, just to name a few. Okay, so you want to help homeless pets, but you're not really sure what you can do. You don't feel comfortable going out with a leash and a bag of treats and trying to track down homeless pets. You do not feel comfortable maintaining a cat colony in your backyard, or you live in an apartment, you don't have a backyard. Completely get it. One of the things you can look into is potentially fostering an animal. And there are tons of benefits to fostering. For the animals, it's a way to be in an environment that is where they're supposed to be, right? Pets belong in homes. So it's a very stressful situation to be in the shelter, and that stress can cause behavior issues, it can cause medical issues, and it also makes us harder to know who that pet is on the inside, okay? So a pet that's in a home allows that animal to be more relaxed. Here you have Mama C, very relaxed cat. She was not doing great at the shelter because she doesn't like other cats. And she was in a room surrounded with other cats. So she was having a very hard time. She was hiding a lot. She was showing aggressive behaviors. And in this foster home, she is thriving because she finally got to relax. And we finally get to see, oh, she loves people, she loves cuddling, she loves chin scratches, all this information that is going to help us find her a home. It also allows animals to get more individualized attention. We do our best at the shelter, but there's only so many of us. And there's much more animals. The animals definitely outnumber the people at the shelter. And we can't sit with one animal for 2-3 hours a day to see how it's doing. So in a foster home, they're more likely to catch some things that may go unnoticed just because the shelter is what the shelter is. It also gives them the opportunity to positively interact with new people and give us an idea of their likes, dislikes, but also to reinforce that idea of strange isn't always bad. Sometimes strange is good. You know, this strange new person came in and they're giving me chin scratches, and that's awesome. Cool. So when they go to meet a new family, they're not always as fearful as they would be, because when you're in the shelter, there's that mindset, you know, that you can see it in the animals, that all change is bad. Everything new is scary and bad, and I don't like it. And that makes it hard for new families to imagine, okay, what's this pet going to look like in 2 months? It's going to be very different than the really, really scared cat that I'm seeing hiding in the corner right here. Now, for humans, Lots of benefits, but in general, some expectations. We want our fosters to provide love and attention, take photos of the animals and give us feedback, provide updates to staff on medical issues, monitoring, giving the prescribed food and medication, seeing to their routine medical and grooming needs, nail trims, hair brushing, things like that, keeping the foster animals space clean. Okay. And then also transporting the foster animal to and from the shelter as needed for medical and adoption appointments. So that's why we don't recommend somebody who lives in Wisconsin fostering an animal for us here in Wheaton, because it is unrealistic to have someone drive multiple hours at the drop of a hat for medical needs. And we need to be very careful with our budget. So we can't just pay some vet a random amount in a state, out of state for us. We have a veterinarian on staff to see to the medical care of the animals, and we need those animals to be able to come in when they need it. But what about the benefits for humans? Well, it's really fun. It can be a way to have a companion animal without having to worry about all of the medical issues and the costs that are associated with that. Because DuPage County Animal Services, we provide the food, the bedding, medicine, supplies, toys, bowls, anything and everything you need. Litter boxes, litter, we got it down, okay? If you're not sure if a certain pet is right for your family, this gives you a little bit of a test run. It lets you see, what are the energy needs for this particular pet? We've never had a rabbit before. How much cleaning does a rabbit take? How much space do they need? Can we set them up in a place where it's going to be okay for our family? This gives you that test run where not the huge commitment. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Nobody's feelings are hurt. You tried, right? And if you are fostering an animal and that animal becomes available for adoption, our fosters are given first choice, because our view is if an animal is already in a loving home that wants to keep it, why not? Right? So if that animal becomes available for adoption, we always talk to the fosters first. Hey, do you want to keep? Do you want to keep this adorable blind little puppy that's licking your husband in this photo? All right, cool. Awesome. Way to go. Right? There are also different kinds of fostering available. There's long-term. So that's what generally people think of when they think of fostering, and that's from when it comes in to adoption. So you keep them for the entire time. That can be a couple days, couple weeks, couple months, longer. Short term, maybe you're filling in for other foster families. So we foster sometimes, but when we leave for the holidays, our foster animals will often go to a different foster family. And they might just keep them over the holidays. Since we travel a lot during the holidays, other people tend to stay put. That works out really well. For the stray hold. So if you are interested in, especially if you're the finder or you're just looking to help out an animal that just went through a really, really, really hard period in its life, fostering them during the stray hold until a determination can be made on what that animal's outcome is going to be. Is that animal going to be made for adoption? Or maybe is it going to be transferred to a rescue partner that can see to behavior needs or medical concerns? That can really help out. And it can help us figure out what that outcome looks like. And also for an animal that maybe just happened to get out and it was an accident, how do we keep that animal out of the stressful situation of the shelter? Okay, folks, I'm sorry, I am running a little long and I do apologize. So I'm going to rush through the rest of the presentation to the best of my ability. But you've been here long enough, I'm a talker, so I'm sorry. But we will still have time for question and answer at the end. So we definitely want to talk about ethical sources for pets, because getting your animals from pet stores can be a big problem and create homeless pets, especially when you think about how many accidental litters of rabbits have come into DuPage County Animal Services just in 2021. People bought rabbits that they thought were both females or both males. Surprise, a month later, they have a bunch of babies. Okay, so these animals will not be, you can't return them to the pet store, right? Because they did their job, they got your money, and that's it. And a lot of times they don't really work with owners on the responsibilities. They won't talk about how a rabbit can live up to 20 years. They won't talk about how, rats, hamsters, gerbils, puppies, kittens, how much exercise they need, how much attention and socialization they need. So definitely make sure that we are encouraging adopting over shopping, because rescues do have more than just cats and dogs. There are all kinds of rescues out there, reptile, bird, small mammal, all kinds. And a lot of times these animals are not damaged, okay? They've come through no fault of their own. Their owner died, their owner moved, a child developed allergies. The animal didn't do anything wrong, and all of a sudden it's homeless. So you guys can help out by getting it a new home. And also, reputable rescues will take their animals back so that there is a backup plan there if something happens to you or your circumstances. Talking more about those accidental litters, we do have a voucher program to help encourage spay and neuter. It can be an expensive surgery. So on our website, we list the low cost options. And our voucher program are for those residents of DuPage County who qualify for the LINK or Social Security disability, get you a free spay neuter for 2 pets over the course of your lifetime. Also includes microchipping and any vaccinations due at the time of the surgery. So it's a great deal. Not very many counties have that, and highly recommend if you know anybody that is just complaining about the cost of spay neuter, let them know the benefits. Accidental litters are not fun to deal with, and there can be a lot of behavioral issues related to hormones in animals. Male dogs tend to pee on everything, and there is also medical conditions that can come as a result of not spaying or neutering, including pyrometra, is an infection of the uterus of an unspayed female dog, and it can be fatal. It typically happens in older dogs that were never spayed. Doesn't even matter if they had a litter or not. So many, many reasons to spay and neuter our pets. And one of the biggest ones is making sure that the amount of pets we have in our county matches the amount of homes available to house them, right? Keeping that scaled balance, because the more pets we have, it's not like all of a sudden we grow a bunch of homes that can take them in. So that leads to more and more animals going into shelters and rescues. Now, being a responsible pet owner does go beyond the minimum requirements. So, proper shelter, food, water, keeping them in from the cold, things like that. Understand that tenants need to be respectful of the rules of their landlords. So we do get this information a lot. They bring home a new pet, they didn't run it by their landlord first. All of a sudden they have to give up their pet or they're going to be evicted. So definitely check with your landlord about your options. If you're looking into having a service or a support animal, those are rules that can help those who need those animals keep those pets in their homes. It supersedes the lease requirements for a lot of places, but you have to go through the proper channels. Also, and I cannot emphasize this enough, pay attention to your pet's habits and their needs. So if you have a pet who loves to go outside, no matter what the temperature is, what's going on, or you have a pet that loves to jump over fences, make sure that you are doing something to prevent them from getting out. We had a foster dog, and oh gosh, he was, the vets called him Hurricane Clyde. He was insane. He used to, when I would crack the door open to get the mail from the mailman, he would ram his head into the front door and jar it out of my hands and take off down the street. He was insane and very lovable, very cute, but insane. So we ended up putting up multiple baby gates around the front door so that he could not do that anymore. And that is something that if your animal has that habit, work with a trainer, work with a behavior consultant to stop that behavior, or make sure you're managing the environment so that they can't do that. And talk to people coming into your home. If you have pet sitters, housekeepers, plumbers, whatever, people that are coming into your home that aren't familiar with your pets, let them know, hey, knock on the door before you walk in. If you have kids and your kids' friends, don't just open the door when you come in, knock so that we can corral the dog or the cat, the rabbit, whoever, okay? And always, always, always do positive training with your pets to work with behavior issue. It's more effective than, you know, screaming, hitting, causing pain, causing fear. Using positive training to help them work for something is going to be more effective than making them afraid of an outcome. We've got a whole bunch of webinars on that if you're interested. And always think in advance, what's your backup plan? If you are unincapacitated, unfortunately, we are in the middle of a pandemic. If you need to go to the hospital or if you have a family member that gets sick and you are unable to care for your animal, have a plan in place beforehand. Where is that animal going to go? Can it go back to the original place where you got it? Can it go back to the rescue? What about a friend or a family member? Research rescues in the area that may be able to take in that animal. I will tell you right now, capacity is very, very high at most places, and it is very hard to surrender an animal at the moment because everybody's full. And it's important to have those plans in place before emergency strikes. All right, folks, thank you so much for sticking with me. I do apologize for going over. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat, and I'll be checking that here in just a second. Upcoming next in a couple weeks, we have kitty concerns. So if you have any feline behavior issues that you're worried about, that you want to work around with, we will be talking about those. And then at the end of the February, on the 17th, we'll be talking about basic first aid for pets. So this is not a certification course, but it is what can you do if your pet has some sort of injury or trauma or illness before you get to see a medical professional, before you get to that emergency clinic or that emergency veterinarian. What can you do to help them out? All right, wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, guys. I really appreciate it. If you ever have any questions, please reach out. You can reach me at humane.education@dupageco.org, or you can reach the shelter by calling us 630-407-2800. We are here to help. Our goal is to have all DuPage County pets in healthy, happy homes, right? We want everything in harmony. So please feel free to reach out if at any point you guys have questions. We are more than happy to answer those questions or point you in the right direction for further resources. So let me check the chat here to see if we have any questions. Oh, wonderful. I've got a great question here. How well can domestic dogs tolerate our cold winter temperatures? This is a fabulous question because it really depends on the kind of dog. It depends on their size and on their breed and on their coat, okay? So I have two dogs, just to give you an example. They are both beagles. They're actually brothers. One is kind of tall and lanky and one's a little shorter and stockier, okay? In this weather, I let both of my dogs outside to go do their business. My taller, lankier dog starts shivering immediately. My short, stockier dog, he's fine. I have to call him in. My shivering dog lets me know, like, okay, I peed, let me in, let me in, let me in. My other dog, I have to go and find him. You know, he's perfectly fine wandering around. Now, that being said, I would never leave them out for long periods of time because they are beagles. They have short coats, thinner skin, and they are not suited for long time in this climate, okay, during the winter. Huskies, some shepherds, those longer haired shepherds, even labs and retriever mixes, they can spend longer periods of time outdoors and still be perfectly comfortable. I have a coworker who has had huskies most of her life, and she has said multiple times that she would try to get her husky to come inside, and it was perfectly fine digging around in the snow having fun. Okay, so one call that we get a lot, especially at this time of year, is, oh my gosh, I see my neighbor's dog out all the time. He's neglecting his dog. But when we talk further, a lot of times it's they see the dog outside in the backyard when they leave for work, they see the dog outside when they come back home for work. It's possible that the neighbor has the exact same schedule and is letting the dog out before he goes to work and gets home a little earlier and is letting the dog out then as well. So we really need to see that with these animals, you need to see like continuum. Okay, it can't just be piecemeal, or a big thing is I was driving down the highway and I saw this dog and it looked like it was in trouble. Okay, you're going 60 miles an hour. How good a look did you get? All right, so really doing our investigative work, and a lot of times just talking to people about what you're seeing there. And what does that mean? You know, do they have a sheltered space? Because the law does not require that all pets be indoor pets. The law requires that they have adequate shelter. So it's possible that those animals have some form of shelter in the backyard that you don't see, you know, or maybe they have access to the garage or a shed somewhere where they can get warm. So making sure that you are having those conversations with people, and if they're not aware, letting them know, like, hey, it can get pretty cold out here. You definitely don't want your Chihuahua out here for more than a couple minutes, okay? So yes, there are some dog breeds that absolutely can tolerate our temperatures. The law does require that we provide proper shelter for them and that they're not just left to the elements for long periods of time, but paying attention to what kind of dog and paying attention to how they act too. I mean, I have one dog that starts shivering 5 seconds after I let him out, and he still wants to sniff a little bit. And then he immediately is like, okay, I'm done. You know, it's a little bit of, you have to do a little bit of investigative work to see what is comfortable for your animal. Okay, wonderful. Okay. So some other questions. What do we recommend for lawn sprays or for weeds that can't hurt pets? So for that, Au Naturel is going to be your best option. Putting in a butterfly garden where you don't have to worry about the weeds, because the weeds are there on purpose, is going to be a good option. I know that's not the happiest answer for most people. The main thing is that when you apply any kind of spray, no matter what the bottles say, those chemicals can build up in our animal systems, even just like when they walk across it and then they're cleaning their feet. Especially cats are very, very clean animals. So they might be out laying on the grass and then they give themselves a bath. And then those toxins are getting into the fatty cells and can cause long-term effects there. So minimal at best. And Au Naturel is really going to be your best safe option there. My solution for dandelions is I let the dandelions grow wild to feed the bees. And then as soon as they start to turn into puffballs, I go out and pluck them so that they can't spread any further. And plus, I think the puffballs are a little gross looking. So that way I'm not liberally applying lawn killer, and I'm also feeding bees, which is good. All right, and do we provide at-home care? We do not provide any medical services to the public. There are mobile veterinarians in the area, and if you want to give the shelter a call tomorrow, I'd be more than happy to pass along that information. Unfortunately, I do not have it in front of me now, but I do have it at the shelter, and they will come to you, which is really nice. So they have this giant van, and they'll pull up in front of your house or in your driveway or whatever, and they can do examinations there. And yes, we do have foster options for more than just cats and dogs. We have fostered rabbits, guinea pigs, gerbils, hamsters, chickens. Trying to think what else. A lot of the reptiles we tend to transfer out to rescue groups because our staff is not properly prepared to find adoptive families for those animals. So a lot of times we work with our rescue partners who know more about those animals. We do tend to stay with the furry side of things or feathery side of things. But yes, so parakeets, even some cockatiels, I think recently we had go into a foster home. So yeah, and from the beginning, it can be if you are looking for that particular type of animal. You know, maybe you're looking to add parakeets to your household, but you've never had them before. You know, talk to us about that when you sign up to foster, and explain, like, I might be interested to keep this animal if that's possible. What can I do? You know, do I need to fill out a different application? Do I need to call at a certain date? What can I do to make sure that everybody knows? Just keep in mind that there are lots of animals, there are lots of fosters, there are lots of adopters, and there are a limited amount of us. There are a limited amount of people who are caring for the animals at the shelter, who are answering the phones. So we always, always ask for your kindness and your patience. When you do call in for questions, we want to help, but we need to, sometimes we need to give you a call back so that we can find the answers and get back to you instead of keeping you on hold forever and ever and ever. Okay, so just know that sometimes we have to get back to you once we found the information. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to pop in that program survey back into the chat. Please feel free to give us your feedback. I'm always looking for how I can improve there, and also ideas for the future. This program was because someone asked, and I was like, what a fabulous idea. Of course, I'll talk about how to help homeless pets. So I always am looking for new ideas. Hope to see you guys soon at a webinar in the future. Sign up for our newsletter or subscribe to our Facebook page to keep up to date on the latest information, okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fabulous rest of your night and stay warm, okay? Bye. Thank you.